Hi, I'm Shannon. Nice to meet you.
Jessica, nice to meet you. Hi, Suzanne, nice to meet you.
Peter, good to meet you.
Bravo. Thanks for coming today. You will be given 20 minutes to present your case. After that, the judges will ask questions for 10 minutes. I will hold up signs showing when 5 and 2 minutes are left. When your time is up for presenting, I will rudely interrupt you. Then the judges, as I said, will be given 10 minutes of time. Do you have any questions before you start? Okay, then I will hand this over. Please start your presentation.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Shannon Donovan.
I'm Jessica Santos.
Peter Hassig.
Susanna Lippinsburg.
And we are Team Bravo. And we will be presenting on NIDIC Global IIoT Strategy. So to begin, we'll start with our issue identification. Then we'll move into our recommendations, specifically product promotion and positioning. Then we'll move through our global strategy regarding data regulation, and finish with some financials, risks, alternative solutions, and ultimately our conclusion. So to begin, these are the 3 main issues that we identified as facing NIDIC right now. So number 1, foresight will disrupt NIDIC's business relationships with OEMs and MROs. 2, to create a strategic advantage, value must be created from the data and given to OEMs and MROs. And 3, data collected must be globally protected and compliant. So now I'll hand it off to Pete to speak a bit to our recommendation.
Thank you. So our recommendation is going to focus on 3 key areas, all the while keeping the fact in mind that the global regulations on data are very sensitive and they're unknown right now. So the first part is we want NIDIC to directly sell Foresight as a software service to its OEM MRO partners. Second part is we want NIDIC to develop into Foresight a new product development that monitors energy consumption in its motors and products. The third, we want NIDIC to implement a robust training program that will really include promotional activities that will really sell the deal to its OEM MRO partners. So I'm going to start answering the question now, how can NIDIC really sell this product, Foresight, to its OEM MRO partners? It's going to start with data sharing, right? Foresight has the ability to streamline data between multiple users, multiple enterprises. So that being said, if you think about predicting when motors will deteriorate, when the end user's motor is about to deteriorate, Foresight can pick that up, transfer that information to the OEM MRO partners, and transfer that in real time to NIDIC as well. The key thing is here, we want this to signal an automated bulk order to happen so that NIDIC can resupply its OEM and MRO partners in real time as needed. This will create an optimized, automated, just-in-time inventory management system. So what are the benefits to this system? It's all about efficiency and cost savings. Just-in-time lean inventory management just got leaner. Now, so these motor sensors can predict, say in a month's time in advance, exactly when the motor is about to deteriorate. The exact number of specific motors to be replaced will be ordered in real time. This takes the human activity out of the equation. It's going to save time, it's going to be more efficient. In terms of human error, that's going to be erased as well, that's going to save money. Another big cost saver for the MROs and OEMs specifically involves changing their service-based business model right now. This model is time insensitive, it's costly in terms of labor, and it's very redundant. These technicians are often checking on machines that aren't broken. Now, you guys will be sending your technicians to areas to replace machines only when needed. This is going to be a predictive, conditional approach that we think is really going to save NIDIC and the OEMs a lot of money. I'm going to turn it over to Susanna now, who's going to talk about our new product development recommendation.
Thanks, Pete. So we're recommending that you implement an energy efficiency component to your product feature, and this is based off of consumer demand for energy efficient and environmentally conscious product features. We also think it supports NIDIC's strategic vision, which is to evolve into a solutions company that supports people and the global environment. And we think it will provide value to consumers in 2 ways. The first, it gives OEMs and MROs an alternative service to provide to end users. And this is to kind of replace that route service monitoring revenue generation. And the second is end users can track and monitor energy consumption, and this we think will create more demand. So rather than just checking in on the motors themselves, they can check in on energy consumption, which is a cost-reducing or a cost-saving feature. So now we're going to go a little bit into promotion for Foresight. Currently, only 32% of manufacturers see potential in the Internet of Things industry to improve their supply chain management and increase revenue. So we want to close this gap and really educate OEMs and MROs on how they can use this efficiently in their business. So we're going to sell directly to OEMs and MROs rather than the end user. So we want to include them in the Internet of Things shift. So Nidec's business model is do it now, do it without hesitation, do it until completed. So this goes along with their business model of kind of jumping in, but we want to bring OEMs and MROs on board to maintain this business relationship. And Jess will go a little bit into how we're going to bring them on board.
So we understand why MROs and OEMs might be a little hesitant to adopt a product like Foresight. So we really wanted to ensure that our positioning was strong and really conveyed that value we can provide to them. So in regards to how we want to position this for MROs, there's really 4 key points we want to address. The first is labor cost and labor supply. So research shows that in the maintenance and service industries, labor supply is actually decreasing, which is causing labor costs to increase. So this product, even though MROs might think it might, limit demand or eliminate jobs, it can actually be really beneficial because it will save them labor costs in the long term. The second point, Pete kind of already addressed, which is that automated just-in-time inventory and the benefits of that. And then the third point is in relation to that energy monitoring new product feature we wanted to promote. So that again offers a new service opportunities for our MROs to replace the fact that they may be losing revenue from that route-based management service. So with this new service opportunity, MROs can kind of call up their clients and be like, hey, this machine's not operating as efficiently as it could in terms of energy consumption. Do you want us to upgrade that for you? And that provides a new service for them to offer their consumers, and then their consumers can also save money from that energy consumption. And the fourth point is that this product should overall increase MRO's customers' satisfaction. So in general, no one really likes spending money or time on things that aren't required, which is kind of what was happening with that route-based management system. With this, you're kind of eliminating that altogether. People feel that their needs are being addressed more efficiently and effectively. In regards to how we want to pitch this to our OEMs, it's pretty similar in the fact that you have those benefits from that just-in-time inventory management system. You have the new service opportunity from that energy monitoring product. But what's different is that OEMs can gain value from this internally. They can use it on their own machines to figure out how to better maintain their machines and service their own machines. And then the fourth point is that they can use the data from their customers, the customers they're servicing with their products, to determine how to improve their products. So if they have a product that they know is breaking every 3 years, they can figure out how to improve that shelf life, how to improve that product based on their customers' data using Foresight. So that was kind of just the overall positioning. Now we're going to dive into a little bit more specifically the promotions involved. So again, we know there's like that initial hesitation to try the product. So we want to offer some sort of incentive, whether it's a price discount, extended days payable, something along those lines, just to kind of get over that initial hesitation to get our users to adopt the product. The second is that we feel there's a big issue with that. A lot of these maintenance and service providers don't feel like they know how to handle the data. They're not trained to handle this data. So we feel that education and implementation, training them for that is super important. So we know Nidex currently has kind of certifications around their Motor Pro series. So we want to kind of offer something similar, online tutorials or maybe even on-site training if necessary to ensure that our customers know how to use this product and utilize the data to its full ability. With that said, we also think it's important to educate them on cybersecurity risk and how to protect their customers' data along with that. And overall, we feel like this will really improve customer confidence and trust with us. So now Shannon's going to dive a little bit deeper into just global expansion. Thanks, Jess. Awesome. So as we transition into our global analysis, the first question at hand is, in looking at the global market, do we standardize or adapt? And our recommendation, although it may seem a bit counterintuitive, is for actually product and in terms of data regulation, we recommend standardization. For product, it's a bit more straightforward. We do view Foresight as a universal technology that can function in any manufacturing market. And we know that NIDIC has many multinational companies that would really benefit from standardization across all of their manufacturing plants. Additionally, our new feature involving energy efficiency does address that global trend towards sustainability, so we think that could really fit in well. As far as data regulation, we'd like to dive a little bit more deeper into analysis to back up our recommendation for standardization. So here, as you can see, global data regulation varies greatly based on region, and for global companies like NIDIC, that does provide a fair amount of inconsistency that can be tough to work with. So we've outlined 3 major areas of operation for NIDIC and the differences in global regulation in each area. So beginning with the EU, just coming up in this next month of May, the EU will transition under the law of the GDPR, which involves very strict regulations around things like consent, the right to access, the right to be forgotten, as well as implementation of data protection officers. So obviously very strict there. Switching to something like the US, where data protection laws are much looser, vaguer, and they even vary by state to state. Differentiation. So tough to work with. Companies can opt into the US-EU protection shield. If they fit those standards, data can be exchanged, but a lot of times companies do fall out of that just because that standard is tough to maintain. And then lastly, we selected Japan to represent the Asia-Pacific region. Right now, Japan does not meet on a national level, does not meet the EU's whitelist of standard regulation. So that data exchange is difficult, but Japan is moving in that direction of EU standardization. That is what our research shows. So with all of this being said, our general recommendation for NIDIC is to standardize to that highest level of data protection, which is the EU GDPR regulation. So that brings us to the question of ownership, the big question of the day. Who owns the data? So although there is no global standard or law saying so-and-so owns the data, so-and-so owns the data, the EU framework does favor the citizen in the end, the end user of the data. So we would like to shift NIDIC's mindset to adapt to that framework. So if a legal issue should arise, we think that NIDIC should bow out and give those end rights to the ultimate user. That's just best to establish trust within their consumer database. And we don't think that the information from a single customer subject is worth the thousands or millions of other data points that are collected from just general access of worldwide data. So just to wrap up this data section, 3 main takeaways. 1, data regulation everywhere varies greatly. 2, the EU's GDPR is becoming the global standard. And because of that, point 3, we think that NIDIC should standardize all operational data protection, all locations around the globe to fit that EU GDPR standard. You know, data is power, but how powerful is it if it is locked in country by country and not able to be shared? So now Susanna will go into our financial considerations.
Thanks, Shannon. All right, so we do recognize that there are significant costs that will be incurred by all parties involved, but we think that there will be cost savings and revenue generation that will offset these costs. So going into each party, for NIDIC, we think they'll have costs for implementation and training, R&D, as well as data regulation, compliance, and the promotion incentive that we built in. But we think there'll be cost savings through the inventory management that Pete outlined, as well as an increase in brand reputation in their customer base when they establish themselves as a leading service provider. For OEMs and MROs, the concern is a reduction in route-based maintenance, but we think that the predictive service and the analytics in the manufacturing process will result in cost savings, and we also think that there will be increased revenue generation as they're able to better reach customers, like free up labor from this route-based manufacturing and reach a bigger customer base. So this is a timeline for our goals. We were really conservative, but we do hope to reach 10% of our customers by the end of 2019 and have Foresight fully implemented into their supply chain process. And we'll measure this by the number of Foresight subscriptions purchased. And I'll hand it over to Pete to go through some of our risks.
Thank you. So as we all know, there are risks associated with every proposal. I'll talk about those now. The first being that the OEMs and MROs that are Nidec's customers could see Foresight as a direct threat to their service-oriented business model. While this is a concern, we think that given Nidec's support, especially in the implementation areas and working with these OEMs and MROs, with the promotions, with the training, and the overall value added given to the OEMs throughout this process, we think that's going to outweigh the threat perceived by these OEMs. Second is that data regulation could completely disrupt this model. Like Shannon talked about, data regulation globally is the Wild West right now. No one really knows what's going to happen, but in terms of our research, we do think that the world is moving towards that global standardized EU method, which is definitely very strict, but that's the way the world is moving, so might as well adapt to that while Nidec can. The third potential risk is that competition could render Foresight completely obsolete. We do know that there are other players in manufacturing that are doing this right now, but it is a small market. Like we said, 33% of manufacturers consider IIoT a big deal to get into, so it's untapped. If Nidec gets in right now, I think it'd be a great first entry to this market. I'll now talk about some alternative solutions we did consider as a team. The first being, why doesn't Nidec just adapt its policy to the local data protection laws? This would be easier. Like Shannon said, they are more lax in the US and Asia. That would give Nidec more control. However, it's important to have foresight in this area because eventually the world will move towards those strict EU standards. Nidec needs to jump on board now. The second alternative solution we considered is to sell Foresight directly to the end consumer. This would be easier. You wouldn't have to go through the OEMs and the MROs, but this would completely render what Nidec is trying to do pointless. Nidec stated that it considers the OEMs and MROs valuable customers. It would be pointless to completely bypass them. The third alternative solution we considered is to completely abandon Foresight and just stick with Nidec's current business model. Again, through our research, the IIoT market, while small now, will be booming. By 2025, it's predicted to be, in terms of revenue generation, to be a minimum of $1.3 trillion globally. This is a market that Nidec needs to get into now. It would be foolish to give up on that. And with that, Jess is going to wrap things up for us.
So earlier we addressed three key issues we wanted to talk about. The first being that Foresight will disrupt Nidec's relationships with OEMs and MROs. The second being that we really needed to find a way to derive value from our data to these MROs and OEMs. And finally, we needed to find a way to make this data globally compliant, and we believe our recommendation did do that. So just to kind of recap, we are proposing an automated ordering system be implemented into the Foresight software. We are proposing a energy monitoring product feature to be added. And finally, we wanted to have really great training and implementation support services along with heavy promotion as well. And what this is going to do is kind of create a streamlined inventory management. It's going to provide value through energy efficiency. It's going to be really easy to implement for our customers. And finally, it's going to standardize our data protection. So with that, we'd like to thank you for your time and open up the floor to any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Very informative. You spent a lot of time on the second question in regards to data privacy protection and security. That's very well researched. Congrats to that. Let me come back to the initial case and the first question. So more or less you focus on the keyword smart manufacturing, is that correct? Inventory management. Can you explain me where this is coming from? Why smart manufacturing? How does it apply to the service industry? Where is that connection there?
Well,
it's
again,
a broad question, but I'm testing you a little bit about the case itself.
Yeah, so through our research and through the case itself, we did find that the IIoT industry, this smart manufacturing, is going to be the next big thing. Manufacturing needs to cut out a lot of costs, especially in terms of labor, and especially in terms of supply chain. As the world becomes more globalized, things need to be more connected, machines need to be smarter. We think Foresight has incredible capabilities in terms of data sharing, and especially if you implement the automatic ordering, it'll take the human error, human effort mostly out of it, and really make things much more efficient and less costly.
Another thing we wanted to focus on was that we get so much data from the Foresight product, but data is really useless unless you can find a way to capture value from it. So we really wanted to find a unique way to capture that value. And what's unique about Nidec is that they can actually provide the machines and monitoring in real time, whereas maybe a competitor, they can tell you, when a machine, a predictive modeling, when a machine's going to break, but they can't really integrate that into your like inventory management system. So that's kind of a differentiator we saw for the Nidec company in this space.
Thank you.
I really like the thought process and the flow of slides, which and also I think you prepared very well. Another compliment. Now also you use the word value quite a few times. So a simple question. Now finally, who owns the data according to you?
Yeah, so according to us, according to us, the end user ultimately owns the data, and we know that that can be risky, but that would be the way that it would be positioned in the EU. And as we mentioned, the global trend is moving towards that, so we could easily see in the next 10 years the entire world or major developing countries also adapting to that same standard, even the United States. So we just feel that it's better at this point in time to transition that ownership to the end user. Although we did identify that this type of data is not particularly sensitive. It's not financial records or medical records. It's really just machine usage. So we don't foresee a huge issue in terms of discrepancies or fighting over the end owner taking back access or submitting their right to be forgotten or things like that.
In terms of access to data, though, we just want to distinguish that the whole value chain will have access to the data, because that's really the only way that JIT inventory automation system would work, is if Nidec knows when machines are breaking and the OEMs and MROs are the customer.
Yeah, and also maybe to add to that, and why I asked that question is, see, at the end of the day, you also mentioned, I think one of you, just having data is not enough, right? It's about deriving some meaning out of the data. So that's where actually who owns the data also matters. So that's why I was checking. But right now, so your thought is the end user owns the data. But you also want to maximize the value for Nidec. So do you want to...
More like the end user has the final say in whether or not their data can be used. But in terms of access to data, the whole value chain will have access to it, because that's really where the value is being generated from, is that we're kind of streamlining that whole value chain. So everyone's kind of deriving value from it in the sense that your MROs and OEMs, they're getting their just-in-time inventory. Nidec can even manufacture kind of just-in-time, they can be producing just the inventory that's needed, and then the consumers have their products ready. They're not waiting, weeks for their materials to be shipped to get their products fixed.
So why does an end user care that he owns the data?
So I think that's what Shannon was saying. It's not particularly sensitive, so we don't really foresee too many issues. But just in terms of if something were to come up, we do think it's better to err on the side of getting that consumer trust. We don't think it's going to be a huge issue, but if something were to ever happen, which we can't really predict, err on the side of caution was kind of our mindset for that.
Doesn't ownership also link to liability? And if an end user doesn't really care about ownership, where's the ownership then?
Yeah, well, if we comply to those EU practices, we do have to ask the owners, do you want to give us your data, whatever. So they have to physically check off, do you want access to this data? So they kind of have to say whether or not. So that kind of will help with that in terms of the liability, whether or not they're checking who owns the data or not.
And to that point, we foresee it as kind of an agreement where, hey, the end user is going to buy this machine, and a salesman will tell them, do you want your energy usage and machine to be monitored to optimize your experience? We will not use it in any harmful way. We won't even look at it, only for these specific reasons. If they check yes, works for them, works for us.
One of your slides that I really liked was showing the globe. And you were talking about the highest standards being in the U.S., Europe, and Japan. Nidec has the product right now. Why wouldn't they go after the territories where the regulations are not clear? They can roll it out and work through all of the bugs. What I'm hearing you say is you're saying they should adhere to the highest standard. Well, what if they're not ready right now, but they have the product ready to go to market?
Yeah, I mean, we thought about that too. I think the thing is though, like the value, there's almost like a network effect, right? So the more data you have, the more value you can generate, the better your predictions can be. It's kind of like a network effect, so we kind of wanted to kind of go after them all at once. Furthermore, if you do, let's say like the more lenient data restrictions now, we just think you're going to have to do it later on in the future. So that's an additional cost. Like why incur that when you could maybe just wait a little bit longer to do EU compliant. Furthermore, like the US is almost there, like Japan's almost there. That's like some really big markets for NIDIC. So it doesn't make sense to like not comply right now, just to comply within the next couple months or year or the near future.
The product, is the product the device, or is the product also the data? Are you going to be able to, utilize the data as a service to an OEM or to a service provider?
Yeah, I think that's the idea in terms of like that just-in-time inventory. I wanted to touch upon that.
Yes.
The product or the data that you're receiving from the device?
It can be thought of as a whole system. So NIDIC would go to an OEM partner and say, hey, we have this Foresight software we'd like to sell to you. You can implement it, attach the sensors to our machines that you're going to sell to your end consumer. Here's what it's going to do. It's going to be a smart sensor. It's going to talk to NIDIC's going to say it's going to talk to you, OEM. It's going to tell you exactly when your customer's machine is going to break. It's also going to order automatically a replacement from us, or from you, NIDIC. So the product is a streamlined, manufacturing experience combined with cost savings that we think can be a hit.
So it's like the product itself and the service involved.
Right.
That's good. I think those are good thoughts because finally, that's how you make money, right? You have to be on the right thought process, right track. And now you can think about monetizing the value. Right? At the end, it's almost like I sell an iPhone versus another phone. Right? But then you got to sell, as you use the word experience. What is the total value? And how do you monetize it? I think that's one more thing you can add. So I think you're on the right track.
Awesome.
A more open question. Let's assume the sensor you just mentioned, that green thing in the business case, doesn't care if it's on a NIDIC motor. It can be on a competitor motor. It can be on any equipment that shakes. What does this mean to the whole business case? And what's the value for an OEM or a service provider in this case?
Yeah, so that's actually really why we wanted to offer that just-in-time streamlined inventory. So yeah, you're right, this product can be used anywhere, but not everyone who has this technology or can use this product can have that automatic inventory replacement. So that's really where you can differentiate yourself in this kind of IoT manufacturing space, is that you can streamline that process and just automatically supply them the supplies they need. Whereas another, let's say you have this monitor on like a non-NIDIC product, you can't necessarily replace them when it's broken. You're still going to need to physically go in and place that order in with the other company.
But let's assume NIDIC then has that sensor on a XYZ competitor motor and sees that motor is going to fail. What does NIDIC do with the data?
So you're saying NIDIC would sell the motor or the sensor to a competitor and still capture the data?
Yeah.
No, NIDIC would apply that sensor, or the customer would apply that sensor to another product that is not NIDIC related. It could be.
Yeah, I think they would still own that data. So like they would collect that data, and they could use it just to kind of to fix like the predictive algorithm or something like that. But they wouldn't obviously be able to replace that order. So they could still.
Why not?
Or I guess they could offer maybe the NIDIC product in that case, be like, oh, you're going to break, do you want to try our equivalent of that product? But in terms of like the actual exact replica, if it's not yours, you wouldn't be able to replace it. We could replace it with, yeah, like a NIDIC product that would function the same way, which actually is a great opportunity, yeah.
So IoT provides a huge level or a high level of transparency. It goes both ways, right? I mean, there's endless opportunities with IoT. Also, competitors probably work on similar solutions, I assume, so they would also see a little bit the quality of a NIDIC product. hints then.
Thank you.
But extremely well researched, specifically the second question, you did a very deep dive there. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Very good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.